content in this video is intended for informational and investigative purposes only. It reflects the research done on the internet, publicly available information, my personal experiences and protected opinions of the Wired Ebikes company based in the Chicago area. And because of Wired's negligence in complying with the Federal Trade Commission regulations regarding pre-sale transactions, their behavior in not meeting their promised delivery dates could be construed by authorities as criminal conduct, along with poor business practices. But this video is not intended to persecute Wired's non-compliance of FTC regulations, but rather to alert prospective buyers and consumers in hopes they will make better informed decisions. Therefore, this video was devised for consumer protection and serving as a consumer advocate to warn buyers against possible scam tactics perpetrated by less than honorable e-bike merchants. Intent here is to encourage accountability and transparency in the e-bike industry, through the disclosure of buyer experiences and questionable business practices that could potentially defraud or cheat well-intended e-bike buyers. I have made every effort to verify the accuracy of the information reflected in this video. It contains testimony and opinions by Wired e-bike owners which were posted on the internet, but difficult to confirm their accuracy, since they represent personal opinions. In addition, I have expressed my own opinions on my personal first-hand experiences with Wired e-bikes personnel and transactions. This video was compiled to warn prospective buyers of Wired Viper from a staunch consumer advocate who strives to protect consumers against scams and unethical e-bike merchants who tend to exploit unwitting buyers. It is aimed at an older, more educated, mature audience who are vulnerable to clever marketing hype and traps like pre-order scams which have become popular and provide some nefarious e-bike merchants with a loophole in the ordering protocol, but are often skirted by clever merchants. One such merchant is Wired e-bikes, who have been ignoring the FTC regulations by failing to meet delivery promises and tricking customers into falling for the pre-order scam, and then failing to meet their promised delivery date. If you have placed a pre-order for the Viper with their original delivery date of May 2026, you are entitled to consumer rights laid out by the Federal Trade Commission. If for any reason you have changed your mind on your Viper, you are entitled by federal law to cancel your order and receive a full refund. Below are the FTC regulations governing pre-order sales of merchandise. And be advised, some people consider the pre-sale ordering system to be a scam, since instead of stocking an inventory for quick deliveries, the merchant is using your front money to pay the factory, so the merchant avoids investment money of his own called capital investment funds from a bank loan to stock inventory. It's a clever trick to exploit customers without spending the merchant's own money, resulting in better profit margins. Scam artists using DDS and the pre-order system are very common nowadays. The consumer is unwittingly being exploited. Listed on the screen are the FTC regulations for protecting consumers against scams. Everybody knows that scheme artists are masterful at using marketing hype to prey on the weaknesses of the human psyche. And Jewish businessmen are well known for their business savvy. However, when they become too clever, they tend to cross the line into deceitful tactics that outsmart even the most careful and discriminating customers. So how do they do this, you might ask? Well, the most effective way is to exaggerate their marketing sales pitch by using inflated claims to impress and win over their target audience. In the case of the Wired scheme strategy, I see red flags for three clever and possibly deceitful things in play. First, Stephen uses the pre-order form of payment to use the customer's money to finance his business operations. This clever scheme allows him to avoid investing his own money to stock an inventory so that customers can receive their e-bikes within a few weeks instead of 4 to 6 months after the customer's cash outlay at the time of sale, or pre-order. And this scheme should be a huge red flag for both informed and uninformed buyers. Historically, the conventional free enterprise business model has always been that the merchant borrows money from banks to finance their inventories, which can be shipped out within a week, much like automobile dealers and Amazon. However, Wired uses the unwitting customer's money to front to the Chinese manufacturer instead of securing a bank loan, and thereby avoid following the conventional best business practices followed by ethical and honest businessmen. But why follow this established and acceptable business model when you can befool the uninformed customer who foolishly buys into all the exaggerated marketing hype, which happens to be the second clever trick the artist employs to exploit their customer base? So, number 2 scheme trick is to embellish the marketing sales points in order to prey upon the weaknesses of the target audience base. And in this case, Steven's marketing hype cleverly targets the vulnerable weaknesses of those customers who happen to have a lust for the thrill of speed and acceleration. And much like Steven himself, America is replete with adrenaline junkies and speed demons who are severely addicted to instant gratification available on tap with the quarter twist of the throttle. So, Steven envisions an unlimited demand for motorcycle performance e-bikes that will attract a large audience, which will generate huge profits if he can embellish the marketing campaign to the addictive levels comparable to that of a heroin addict. And therefore, he begins to devise an addictive marketing strategy that will captivate the lust of the average adrenaline junkie. And Steven reasons much like a heroin addiction: if he can supply the addict's habit, then the adrenaline junkie demand will be endless. Because, just as legendary showman P.T. Barnum allegedly stated, there's a sucker born every minute. I contend that whenever a population has a psychological weakness and addictive craving for instant gratification, there will scheme artists appearing to capitalize on that common human weakness. And even older and wiser baby boomers are susceptible if they are going through their 10th midlife crisis and need the thrill of speed to uplift their moods. And sadly, it seems that not so ethical enterprising scheme artists are mostly attracted to filling that seemingly insatiable addictive demand for speed. So, in summary, we have a shrewd enterprising opportunist from Chicago who tricks customers into using the customer's pre-order money to finance the purchase of his e-bikes with questionable quality, over-amperaged controllers, and overpowered Chinese e-bikes that have the death wobble at certain speeds, and are illegal in most US states, and all models priced for windfall profits available to any clever scheme artist. Not a bad enterprise when you think about it. And if your marketing team is composed of a few hand-picked willing shills and puppet clowns who review them favorably on YouTube, you can even cultivate a sizable fanboy following that will help add momentum to the popularity of the scheme. My solution to this problem is simple. My copious research has disclosed that the Alpha Mini is a strong contender to the wired Viper. Most of its components are comparable. The top speed is the same, and the Alpha Mini uses only one rear hub motor to accomplish the same level of performance numbers. When my Viper order was rudely cancelled by Wired and I was banned from future purchases simply because I complained that they missed their promised delivery month and their massive flaming egos were insulted, so they retaliated foolishly by cancelling my Viper order and banning me from future purchases. Because I had done many favors for Steven in the past, I likely could have talked them into reinstating the Viper order, since they did soften up a little later when they discovered they overacted in a brash manner. But once someone shows their true colors in a flurry of childish immature fit of angry outburst, I'm totally done with those insensitive adolescent misfits, especially when they used my $4,000 for over 5 months while I waited for their undelivered late delivery. So, subsequently, my research disclosed that there are several magicial dealerships that stock batches of Alpha Mini e-bikes, who seem more honest and accommodating by stocking the minis in their inventories. The Alpha Mini is priced at $1,000 cheaper than the Viper. And the Alpha Mini tops out at the same speed as the Viper and does it with one less front hub motor to worry about. The acceleration might be a few seconds slower than the Viper, but if a measly 2 seconds is a deal breaker, then spend the extra $1,000 and take your chances with the Viper, which reportedly overheats because it has an overamped controller and the handlebars wobble at certain speeds because the Cane Creek Bisco Chinese knockoff is fake. My discriminating personal opinion is this. In my honest experience, the Wired team is comprised mostly of people seemingly having a demeanor like that of an immature, arrogant, self-centered person with an entitled or privileged attitude. A select few seem to sport a huge flaming egos that are very easily insulted when challenged, even when they are at fault. And like the cancel culture, Wired staff will write you off in a heartbeat if you even slightly ruffle their feathers, even if legitimately and justifiably. They seem immature and easily insulted, dismissive, and plain rude. If this is the treatment you can tolerate, then be my guest. There are a lot of customers who like Wired, which I contend is only because they have not yet had an issue with their e-bike or never needed to confront Wired to receive abuse treatment, so they think Wired is great, since there were no problems or confrontations. But if you take the time to research all the commentaries on the internet, you will find volumes of complaints and criticisms against Wired e-bikes and staff. But what about Wired CEO Stephen Goldman? Well, if I were to invoke my psychology degree wisdom, I would say that Stephen has a sometimes likable personality, in general. But business-wise, he seems as a taskmaster and overachiever. I contend his innermost secret subconscious programming that tends to drive his personal and business behaviors. We all have some degree of this subconscious programming, which is derived from old unresolved childhood traumatic experiences buried deeply in the innermost recesses of subconscious psyche. That is, based on the personality cues I have seen, I would venture a guess that Stephen's father was a tough taskmaster with fatherly expectations far exceeding what Stephen could achieve in childhood to please his father. In addition, I have a subtle sense that likely he has an old subtle feeling of being neglected by both parents in his childhood. And this combination of childhood afflictions during the formative years of childhood, aged 1 through 6, which develops into a subconscious sense of unworthiness that is instilled in the adult psyche. This affliction instills a powerful psychological drive to succeed and prove one's worthiness to both oneself and others. And thus he likely strives to win favor and from others to fill that felt void in the heart. This might explain his apparent obsession for building the fastest, most powerful, and aesthetically pleasing e-bike on the market. I contend that the Wired e-bike design and performance is a symbolic extension or manifestation of Stephen's ego complex, which serves to compel him to produce the e-bike having the most powerful, aesthetically pleasing, and worthy of admiration, which is secretly his representation of his yearning ego image to society. This theory follows suit with Stephen's creation of the Viper. Initially he winced at suggestions of building a small e-bike, because it gave the appearance a young child's toy bike and thus implied weakness or inferiority. This image was unacceptable to Stephen's ego construct, which wants to portray an image of size, strength, and power. But customers were clamoring for a shorter e-bike, so eventually Stephen caved to demands, which ultimately thrives on his creations of daunting performance and commanding superiority, amounting to a projection of his desired self-image. However, he eventually rationalized by reasoning, if the Viper is smaller, then it must convey an even stronger and more powerful image and presence, signifying the same self-image to society as his own desired personal image of himself. Since all his e-bike models symbolically and psychologically represent an extension of his own ego self-image, he configured the smaller Viper model with same intimidating prowess as the Predator, but packaged in a smaller size. His ego extension drive dictated it must be just as intimidating as the Predator, to compensate for its smaller size, thus, a powerful, unnerving, daunting, dominating, respected street fighter. Which is quite pleasing to the ego. When you look at a Wired e-bike and its performance, essentially you are looking at a physical manifestation of Stephen's ultra ego, symbolized in a tangible mechanical object. Every single Wired e-bike seems to have Stephen's psychological fingerprints all over it. Through his e-bike designs and powerful performance, he is painting you an image of his own most desirable self-image. This is the power of one's subconscious programming that drives a person's superior creations. However, if you insult or criticize him or his bikes, you are essentially insulting Stephen's personal image of himself. And in doing so, expect defiant verbal retribution in return for your perceived disrespectful criticism. And this very thing is precisely what happened to me when I told Wired they missed their promised delivery date and were in violation of FTC regulations by failing to comply with their promised delivery projection. and which resulted in them brashly canceling my Viper order and banning me from any future purchase of a wired e-bike. This harsh response is a classic example of the insulted ego trying to repair itself by counter-assaulting in brash anger and retaliation by the bruised ego. Hoo-hoo. I'm grateful for being divorced from an immature bunch of rude egomaniacs who displayed entitled attitudes and arrogantly gloat in their psychological delusion of being the best e-bike in the world market, likely stemming from their perceived success of sales volume, based on exploiting hundreds of both happy customers as well as dissatisfied customers who fell for their finely tuned marketing hype that many people claim is grossly exaggerated and misleading. But as friend who loyally supported Steven with design suggests and warning of potential design flaws, why such an overreactive response for my justified complaint? Bear in mind the definition of the ultra ego, an immensely powerful psychological mechanism that operates on the unique rule: the more the insulting damage the ego takes, the more it indulges in its fighting spirit and the stronger it becomes. It requires heavy self-indulgence in battles, embracing raw emotions, and actively taking enemy assaults to fuel its own power. A broad brush stroke for wired psychological profile and behavior. One very notable unfair exploitation that I personally experienced was the direct dropshipping protocol that does not allow the customer to see or inspect the e-bike before it is delivered. In my case, the 26-inch Freedom frame was far too tall to easily mount, and requires a stool or curbing to mount and dismount the bike. It also precluded my feet flat on the ground when at a stop sign. Reports on the internet indicate that many vertically challenged customers also share this same problem. The applicable rider heights for the bike are misleading and incorrect on the Wired website, which amounts to exploitation by failing to warn customers, and misrepresentation on their website. This represents blatant negligence and insensitivity toward the unwitting customer. Total lack of regard for the disappointed customers. Then 5 years later, Wired eventually builds a 20-inch bike for shorter riders, but remains unsure of the actual delivery date. If you want a high-performance 20-inch e-bike, and you don't want to risk doing business with a dealer that is allegedly arrogant, egotistical, unfair to customers, and also uses the pre-order system to hold your money for up to 5 months before delivery, then you may want to consider buying the Magician Alpha Mini. If you buy from Magician online, there will be the same pre-order front money required. But some Magician partners or dealers offer test rides before purchasing the Mini, and sell directly from their inventory stock. The Alpha Mini has comparable performance of the Viper along with comparable components. However, the Magician warranty support has not yet been tested or reported as to its efficacy. So there exists potential risk. And the Alpha Mini costs $1,000 less than the Viper. The Alpha Mini attains the same top speeds as the Viper, but without the front motor.
Whoa! This is the Magician Mini Alpha 72 volt 50 mile an hour electric bike, and today we're going to review it. It's got a claimed peak power of 5,000 watts on the in-runner style completely silent geared hub motor.
I mean, dude, right now on this prototype, this one goes 42, but the final version is going to be 50 miles an hour. And honestly, I don't really see how you would ever need more power or torque than what this bike has to offer. Just like the smoothness factor, and then the fact that, you know, it's got the pedal assist system that's smooth as well. So I mean, you get power in proportion to how hard you press on the pedals or use the throttle. It's got the on-off switch for the throttle. You got big batteries. The whole thing is like a small form factor. I mean, it's comfortable to be on. We have full suspension with that nice 4-bar linkage on the back, a nice rear shock, good shock on the front. And just the fact, like the form factor on this one, you know, you could be a pretty small rider and fit on this bike for sure. And even at 6'5" with the taller seat post on it, I feel totally fine on this thing. And even the weight, since, you know, it sits lower to the ground with the shorter wheels, it feels like way more manageable compared to the full-size Alpha. So I honestly have nothing at all bad to say about this bike at all. Like, this thing is everything I'd expected from it and more, honestly. This is more than I expected. Actually, one more test for you crazy mofos. No hands. There's no sort of wobble on this bike. I think the dual crown fork, probably the dual crown fork in that lower battery position just helps with the physics on the balance of this bike, but it feels, I've never felt any sort of shake on the handlebars this entire ride.
The following excerpts are from opinion and commentary posts made on the internet by arbitrary posters regarding wired e-bikes. As an e-bike technician, I have nothing good to say about wired. They are too much power, not enough thought. Counterfeit parts, like knockoff Cane Creek Visco headset to reduce speed wobble from their flimsy frames. Steel bolts through aluminum holes for pivots on the full suspension model, which will hollow out. Should be bearings. Then they overamp the controller, no wonder they are overheating. Not to mention they know that their bikes are illegal, that people are flying down bike paths at 40 mph. Absolute scum. I remember the wired Ebike CEO acting like a total asshole on social media to the Excel CEO, who he supposedly stole their frame design from. Someone supposedly proved he had a burner account putting fake positive reviews of wired. From all I hear, the CEO is a dishonest, unethical person. I'm having a horrible experience with wired e-bikes and regret my purchase. The owner Steve is a lying fool. I thought I did my research and choose a 2025 Wired Warrior as my first e-bike. As a motorcycle rider I wanted some power. Bike is cool, but straight out of the box I had problems. Both rotors were severely warped, derailleur was bent and scratched up, broken freewheel that freewheels forward randomly. My knee didn't like that at all. Wired responded to the bad parts and apologized and sent a replacement rotor and freewheel, and that's where the help stopped. While waiting from the freewheel, I noticed the seal on the hellbender was falling off. I asked Steve about it and he said throw it away, it's not needed. I disagreed fully, as the Cane Creek Visco headset definitely needs a freaking seal, he argued and spit lies to defend his reasoning. I called his bluff. Talked to Cane Creek's myself. Is a risk dude got pissed. He acted like a child for being wrong. Got extremely rude with me. I called him out for the sudden attitude and childish response and he doubled down and threatened me with harassment for trying to get warranty parts handled. This dude is freaking nuts. So I went to the Wired socials I was part of to try and tell my experience, but the fanboys and cronies attacked me and deleted my post within an hour, deleted all my video evidence and kicked me out of the group to hide bad publicity. Now I'm sitting on a $3,000 paperweight that's broken, and I've been completely ghosted by Wired with no warranty support. Scam of a company, can't wait to see them go down in flames. Burn Steve, burn, you son of a... I have 2,600 and have had them from the start. I've gone through one motor and a burned out speed controller on my Freedom. It's a 24 V2 Model 2. So it's really dependent on certain aspects like temp, alt change surfaces and rider weight. I'm only sub 150 pounds, and I still experience the overheating quite fast. I've been warning people to stay away from Wired for years due to their shitty manufacturing and business practices. It's a marketing company, and they are good at what they do with uninformed customers. Without knowing much about the company, the red flags for me are: spends a lot on marketing and brand image. There are so many clickbait e-bike reviews for their bikes on YouTube talking about how cool and fast they are. wild amount of power being put to one wheel from a small hub motor. I personally asked about their bikes and how they can handle rain, and the response was put a bag over the screen. Important warning about Wired e-bike company practices. I need to share something concerning about how Wired is handling customer feedback about their Freedom bike and other models. I'm a member of a Wired Facebook group and have personally witnessed comments being deleted when people mention overheating issues, particularly when pushing the bikes hard or climbing steep hills. What's more troubling is that the company is reportedly emailing customers claiming there's no overheating issue, despite a significant portion of owners, I've seen over 50% of people in various threads, confirming they've experienced repeated overheating with their bikes. Here's what bothers me. I'm not even upset that the bikes overheat. That's a technical issue that can happen with any product. What I am upset about is the censorship and dishonesty. Deleting legitimate customer concerns and then denying the issue exists via email is a serious red flag. This isn't about the product having a flaw. It's about a company that won't stand behind their product or be transparent with their customers. Good companies acknowledge problems and work to fix them. Companies that censor criticism and lie to customers show poor business ethics at their core. If you're considering buying from Wired, please be aware of how they treat customers who report issues. These are the blatant red flags I personally see with Wired e-bike products, management, and treatment of customers. First, the pre-order system is a scam, whereby they use the customer's money to finance their operation, instead of simply stocking an inventory and shipping orders immediately like reputable companies. Secondly, they violate FTC regulations by failing to meet their promised delivery dates. Thirdly, Wired marketing exaggerates the attributes of their e-bikes. Fourth, their bikes are grossly overpriced for what you get. Fifth, Wired exploits customers by playing on their weaknesses for their addiction for speed and acceleration aspects. Sixth, they deceive their customers and rudely overreact when customers challenge on a legitimate issue. Lastly, their staff behaves with arrogance, hubris, and rude responses. These shortcomings occurred in my personal experience, as well as being voiced by many others on the internet, Facebook, and YouTube platforms. I would recommend considering comparable and cheaper options like the Magician Alpha Mini, or others, before ordering the Viper. Or at least wait until customers have posted their opinions of the Viper on YouTube. And be very cautious of the puppet clowns that Wired cherry picks for affiliates to review, tout, and embellish their e-bikes. Even if you love the Wired e-bike, the question you should ask yourself is whether or not you want to deal with an owner and his staff that cannot accept criticism or challenges when they are wrong. The blatant red flag that I experienced, along with other Wired e-bike owners, is their defensive hubris egos that are easily insulted, which then causes them to double down and overreact by canceling your order and banning you from all future purchases of their products. This seems blatantly childish and immature behavior for grown adults. And besides that, many owners have disclosed that the Wired models that have over-amped controllers cause overheating issues with the motors. And we all know that heat is the enemy of motors, controllers, and lithium batteries. And when anyone pushes the limits of any component, there is a serious safety danger that can cause component failure or even personal injury when at high speeds. Wired e-bike electrical systems seem to be pushed to their limits, which causes overheating and ultimate component failure. Then you get stuck with a warranty battle with immature, irrational people whose flaming egos are obsessed with winning the battle by possibly canceling your order and banning you from all future purchases. Do you really want to risk that kind of belligerent retaliation, abuse, and exploitation? That very behavior from Wired happened to me, along with many others who have posted their unfair experience on the internet. So, why do you think it won't happen to you, when this has happened to many others? I post this scathing warning, only to protect other prospective Wired e-bike buyers. And not because I'm retaliating because I was mistreated by Wired staff. Because after some intense arm wrestling with Wired, they ultimately refunded my money on my Viper pre-order, which took over 4 months of waiting, and was never delivered on the promised delivery date of May 2026. This kind of blatant, irresponsible, immature behavior should be known by all future prospective buyer who should not suffer the woes of past buyers. These kinds of merchants should be called out on their disreputable, immature, and arrogant treatment of well-intended customers. And what most disconcerting about this unfair treatment, is their arrogant, entitled attitude because of their thin-skinned flaming ego construct. Personally, I felt like I was negotiating with childish little kids playing in a sandbox, when somebody took their toys and they started crying and retaliating because they felt insulted. I refuse to associate with, or interact with childish, hubris, arrogant adults that behave like children, when they are called out for their mistakes. I offer one last heads up for prospective Wired e-bike buyers, who might want to consider the Magician Alpha Mini e-bike instead of the Wired Viper. After experiencing a frame vibration issue with my Wired Freedom, I feel compelled to share it with Wired consumers. Wired e-bikes use the Hentic motors for their rear hub motor. I own the Wired Freedom e-bike. I always notice a strong vibration when the Hentic motor is under load. This motor uses hybrid nylon planetary gears with steel-clad tips, theoretically to extend the life of the gears by adding structural reinforcement for high torque loads without stripping the nylon core. However, this steel-clad tip has trade-off issues to consider. I noticed significant vibrations conveyed the frame and detectable at the seat via the seat stays holding the motor axle securely. This vibration effect, with steel against steel gears, is corroborated by the loud noise created by the motor's steel-clad gears. A continuous vibration to the frame can result in a risk of small frame fractures occurring under high torque loads, when the vibration is experienced and most apparent at its worst. Frame vibration and frame fracture can weaken the frame and result in weld failures or frame tube breakage, as well as extra stress on adjacent components. All of which could result in frame failures, further aggravated by constant wear and tear impact. Therefore, there is an obvious trade-off between extended gear life and the vibration annoyance along with vulnerability to weld or frame fractures or failures. Personally, I prefer quiet motors and no vibrations that make the riding experience more comfortable and pleasurable. While others may prefer the noise that projects power and gains attention. That choice is yours, but knowing the impact of steel-clad motor gears should be considered depending on your noise and safety preferences. The Magician Alpha Mini uses the 72V Beifang H650 rear hub motor and gearing customized for maximum torque while keeping the internal rotor at a safe speed for reduced heat, high torque, and reliable gear wear. With a top speed of 53 miles per hour. And goes 0 to 30 in 3 seconds at 180 Newton meters. The Alpha Mini motor is whisper quiet compared to loud drone of the Wired Hentic motors. This was Wired Support's email reply, when I told them they missed their promised deliver date in May of 2026. Only after I warned Wired that they were in violation of FTC regulations, did they promptly email all Viper buyers to notify them that their delivery dates were delayed, using yet another fabricated phony reason that seemed to benefit the customer. When Wired makes mistakes, their shrewd marketing people spin it to make it appear as a benefit to the customer. Merely more scam manipulation to preserve and protect their trumped-up stellar image. Do you really trust a company that is not transparent and honest? One that blows smoke and lies about mistakes they make? Wired is masterful at marketing hype and spinning their mistakes into fabricated compensating benefits for the exploited customer. eCell CEO, David Cleveland, made these same mistakes, and eventually had to close their doors. As a result, many eCell's customers are stuck with unfulfilled warranty issues. People that lie and deceive usually wind up losing, along with their betrayed customers. This is the rude email that Wired sent me when I announced to them that they missed their promised delivery date, and was a violation of FTC regulations. Their ego got insulted with this truth of their mistake, and therefore they lashed out by canceling my order and banning any future purchases. Immature, childish behavior at their best. This proved to be an excellent opportunity to rid myself of these shallow-thinking jerks, whose ego get insulted easily, even when they make a mistake or break a promise. And now I alert others of Wired's childish behavior, designed to intimidate and punish customers who call them out on their mistakes. Not until after I sent Wired a copy of the FTC regulations, which they violated, did they immediately send to their Viper customers the attached notice, in order to be in compliance with FTC regulations. And since Wired felt insulted by their non-compliance, they immediately canceled my Viper order. This is typical scam behavior by arrogant, egotistical scam artists when they get challenged for their mistakes and then attack those who offend them. And in this case, after attention was brought to their violations, Wired immediately issued the follow notice and attempted to spin it to imply that their delay was justified, by inserting some excuse that the customer was benefiting from the delay, by getting an improvement on the bike. Bullshit. Once again, this is mere fancy footwork to spin their mistakes into a seemingly benefit to the customer. More lies and lack of truthful transparency to their customers. Contend that the Wired fanboys will totally ignore the truth of this unethical behavior, because they don't want their pristine image of Wired to be tarnished. Because they already own a Wired e-bike, they want to justify in their own mind that their purchases were correct and justified. Nobody wants to believe they have been scammed. So, the Wired fanboys either ignore complaints or chastise anyone that exposes truths that tarnish their false illusion that Wired is honest and trustworthy. They bask in their delusion and prefer to lie to themselves and believe that their Wired purchases were good choices. Dear Wired customer, first and foremost, we want to let you know that your May pre-order has been delayed slightly. The reason is actually good news. Rather than shipping the bikes exactly as originally specified, we made the decision to include several major upgrades at no additional cost. Every May pre-order Warrior, Scout, Predator, and Viper will now receive our new adjustable torque sensor programming, and every Warrior, Scout, and Predator will also come equipped with fully integrated turn signals and a horn. The Viper was already scheduled to receive integrated turn signals. The biggest upgrade and the primary reason for the delay is our new 1:10 torque sensitivity system. Most torque sensor e-bikes are shipped with a single factory setting. If the response feels too aggressive or too tame, riders simply have to live with it. With the new Wired system, riders can now choose from 10 different torque sensitivity levels, allowing them to completely customize how the bike responds to pedal input. Want the motor to engage with less torque pressure? Turn the sensitivity up. Prefer a smoother, more controlled ride? Turn it down. The result is a riding experience that can be tailored to each rider's personal preference. Predator and Viper May pre-orders. These bikes have already been picked up from our factory and are currently awaiting loading onto the first available cargo vessel. Once assigned to a specific vessel, we will immediately provide an updated estimated arrival date. Here again, is another example of how Wired spins their mistakes, like this late delivery response, into clever excuses like inventing some improvement to justify their late delivery. I suspect this late delivery is the common negligence by many Chinese manufacturers, when they delay deliveries until they are able to get enough orders to fill a shipping container before actually shipping on the promised ship date. Wired and their customers are at the mercy of the Chinese factories who ship when it is convenient and most profitable for them in filling a shipping container. And ultimately, the customer suffers the negligence of both the factory and the retail seller. This is another reason why Wired should first stock an inventory stateside, long before they advertise the e-bike is for sale to customers. But as mentioned before, it is to Wired's advantage to institute the clever pre-order system, so that Wired does not have to use their own money to finance their operation. Therefore, Wired avoids using standard best business practices where an inventory is stocked prior to advertising the e-bike sales. The problem is with the Viper shipment. Wired states it is not yet on the shipping vessel in China. This means, it will take at least another 30 to 40 days to transport across the ocean from China to California port. Then must be trucked across the country to your house. I contend the Viper delivery will be in late June or even July. This amounts to about 4 to 5 months that Wired holds your $4,000 in their bank account while you wait 5 months for the bike. The summer is now half over. Typical scam artistry at its best. Why would Wired stock an inventory when they can use the unwitting idiot customer's pre-order money to finance their entire operation, and never use any of their own money to stock an inventory like most legitimate retail businesses? If you want a high-performance 20-inch e-bike, and you don't want to risk doing business with a dealer that is allegedly arrogant, egotistical, unfair to customers, and also uses the pre-order system to hold your money for up to 5 months before delivery, then you may want to consider buying the Magician Alpha Mini. If you buy from Magician online, there will be the same pre-order front money required. But some Magician partners or dealers offer test rides before purchasing the Mini, and sell directly from their inventory stock. The Alpha Mini has comparable performance of the Viper along with comparable components. However, the Magician warranty support has not yet been tested or reported as to its efficacy. So there exists potential risk. And the Alpha Mini costs $1,000 less than the Viper. The Alpha Mini attains the same top speeds as the Viper, but without the front motor.
You there, second desk, blue jacket. What is your name?
My name is Alexis.
Alexis, please leave my lecture room. I don't want to see you at one of my lectures ever again.
I don't understand.
I am not going to ask a second time. Thank you. Why are there laws? What are laws for? Anyone?
Social order?
So that you can rely on the government?
Justice? Thank you. Tell me, was I unfair to your classmate just now? Indeed I was. So, why didn't any of you protest? Why didn't any of you try and stop me? You see, what you have just learnt, you wouldn't have understood in 1,000 hours of lectures unless you lived it. You didn't say anything because you weren't affected yourself. You think it doesn't concern you, so it's none of your business. Well, I'm here to say, if you don't help bring about justice, then one day you too may experience injustice, and there will be nobody there to stand before you. We console ourselves that the problems of others are nothing to do with us, none of our business. Every day an injustice happens in business, sport, or on the tram. Relying on someone else to take care of it is not good enough. It is our duty to be there for others, to speak up for others when they cannot. I am here to teach you the power of your voice. I want you to learn critical thinking to empower you to stand up for what is right, even if it means going against what everyone else is doing. Let's begin.
Whoa! This is the Magician Mini Alpha 72 volt 50 mile an hour electric bike, and today we're going to review it. It's got a claimed peak power of 5,000 watts on the in-runner style completely silent geared hub motor. It's got dual batteries and the short wheels.
Please think again carefully before being seduced and fooled by wired marketing hype. Even if you judge the e-bikes as faster and therefore appealing, do you really want to deal with allegedly arrogant, egotistical, dismissive people who resist living up to their product and warranty claims, according to customer complaints? And why would you front out $4,000 in advance for the pre-sale gimmick and then wait for months for delivery while they hold your money? I suspect that mature baby boomers are smarter and more rational than the younger, more impetuous adrenaline junkies who tend to discount ethics and fairness. Youth focuses more on thrills and eye candy, rather than the honesty and fairness of trustworthy sellers. There is certainly nothing wrong with wanting a fast, high-performance e-bike. But when most of the PPV e-bikes are mostly comparable in top speed, performance, and components, why buy from a dealer who is reportedly an arrogant, egocentric, unfair seller that allegedly treats customers poorly, and at a premium profit? The wired product lines are overpowered, overamped, and pushed to their limits, which reportedly causes overheating issues when pushed to their extremes. Then puppet clown reviewers overly tout the high performance when reviewing the wired e-bikes. The hand-picked wired reviewers never test for wobble, the most blatant acid test for frame stability and safety. Wired e-bike frames allegedly have far too much twisting and flexing. Their weight distribution and center of gravity defy physics. I can personally attest to this fact. And their paint jobs are shoddy. And Steven absolutely refuses to install a water bottle rib nut on the down tube, which seems eccentric, since customers request it. Demonstrating his obsession for doing everything his way, instead of what the customer wants. Steven's obsession seemed to spill over into the aesthetics of his bikes as well as his excessive performance extremes. Seemingly too much unresolved psychological pathology for my taste. And the Magician Alpha Mini comes standard with the water bottle rib nuts installed.